Billy got the ball again a little later on, and he was a little farther back, and he spun, turned, set it, and he kicked it, and he hit the crossbar.
Oh, so he was lower this
Just
time.
in the corner. He just boing off there. Well, then the coach pulled him out and yelled at him, and his hands were going, and he sent him to the end of the bench, and he looked over across the field at me, and he goes,
Right, see?
Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
and I'm Eric.
Eric and Lucas are licensed professional counselors, and we have been talking about 5 things dads do that push their sons away.
And part 3, living through their son's achievements. And I think, Eric, I heard you talk about living vicariously. So like, yeah, I could, well, how many parents do that, right?
There's a lot of us that will struggle with that it's going to be it's a real battle. I mean, you've played sports, or you've done the activity, or you've been a part of the club,
Or you wanted to
And
be,
you wanted
and
to
your kid
be.
has the opportunity.
Yep. And then it kind of goes to how overly invested you might become in their achievements, their performance, their project, their anything in there. I've seen, parents who were mediocre athletes, but then their kids were really great athletes. And so they were overly invested in them doing even better than what they did. I've seen parents who were great athletes, and now their kids had to live up to that.
And their kids possibly were average or underperforming. And oh my goodness, I can imagine the pressure there.
There's that, or they were great athletes.
And I can imagine the pressure there.
Yep.
Yeah,
But they were, they had coaches, private coaching lessons.
Yeah.
They had multiple teams they were on. They had,
Man, wasn't one of our employees talking about that? Like her daughter was on like the regular team and the club team and
club
like
team.
simultaneously.
Yep.
Where she had to go like 2 practices a day or
Yep.
something. I may be misremembering the story, but the theme is there.
yes. Well, and with that particular situation, it's actually the child that is signing themselves up, for those different
Oh,
things.
that's right. The additional part of the story was that the kid in question would
Yep.
take an Uber to get to the places they
Yeah.
wanted to go.
They set their own things up.
So like that
Whereas
could
like
be
kids
a bad,
I've seen,
it could be a bad scenario, but that one is actually like
that's a different,
the kids pushing.
a different piece in there.
So I've always heard of this whole idea of parents living vicariously through their kids. What is the difference between I want my kid to succeed and I'm excited that they're doing that, and then living vicariously through my kid? Is it that like I'm getting some kind of emotional thing
Yes.
fed because
Yes.
it's almost as if they're me
Yeah, that's what vicarious means.
and
Like
it's
I am living
living through
you.
them?
As an extension of me,
Okay.
you see.
So I'm
they're
invested kind of for the
Yep.
wrong reason in a way. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I remember when I was a professional photographer, one of the high schools that I was taking sports pictures at, they had 2 new students who transferred in from other schools. Their parents moved them to this town to be on the basketball team.
This team.
And because it would then possibly displace other players, they were getting death threats on their windshields.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Hello.
Yeah. And I'm like,
From parents
what?
or students?
To
be clear.
It wasn't students who were putting in the death threats.
wasn't students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy schmolies.
Yeah. They found out some of the parents some of the people as to who it was, and they dealt with that. But those are parents who are living vicariously. You're not going to knock my kid out. One really good example is I knew this one young man. He was a basketball player. His second oldest brother was like he was a football player, and then he was an All-American wrestler out of Boston College for like a number of years. So really great athlete. Little brother wants to play basketball. He has more height than either of his 2 older brothers, and he's built to be like a power forward. His dad was a big-time basketball player himself. And so one day, because on his freshman team, I'm watching him, I'm taking pictures, and I got to know his family. And I asked Dad, okay, what's Billy's, thoughts about, going forward? And he goes, he's kind of just in the play with it phase. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I mean, he looks like he has talent. He goes, oh, he has a lot of talent. He has more talent than anybody in the family. And I said, well, what doesn't that mean he should? And he goes, no. He goes, that's where I'm going to leave it to him. I'm going to leave it to him to decide what he wants to do, because I don't want to end up living vicariously through him. I had my day. I made my decisions. My day was good. But if he wants to do this, that's wonderful. And if he doesn't want to do that, I'm okay with that too. He'll find something else. His oldest brother, actually one of the most non-athletic people I've ever known, he went on to Job Corps and was a heavy equipment operator. And very...
God bless those folks.
Right. And I remember talking to Sean, and he was like, everybody puts down Job Corps, but I was actually there to do the program where most of the people weren't. And
so that's not a Job Corps problem.
Yeah. Right. He's like, you can get a really good training. And he had the mind for it. He was great at it. What his youngest brother did one day is he was getting frustrated on the court because the coach wasn't putting him in there all that much. And so he approached the coach, he approached his dad, and he was venting out his frustrations. And his dad said, listen, I mean, I don't mind hearing what you have to say, but on one hand, why are you talking to me? I mean, I don't mind hearing it. You're venting it out, but are you going to do anything with this? Do you want to do anything with this? And his son's like, well, what do you mean? Can't you just do something? And he goes, yeah, that's not how that works, kid. He goes, well, then what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to take everything you just said, pull out the emotions, and go talk to your coach. And you might start it with, hey, coach, I'm wondering how I might be able to get more playing time.
Yep.
And then talk. And so he thought about that for a day or two, and then he went and he talked to his coach. And his coach said, okay, these are the areas that I would really need you to improve. And so then he came back to his dad, and he said, okay, here's what the coach said. And his dad goes, okay, well, what do you want to do with that? And he goes, I don't know. Can't you fix that? And he goes, I don't think you're understanding this. And his middle brother, the wrestler, was sitting there going, yeah, I understand.
I've been here.
Yep, I've been here.
Yeah.
He said, listen, his youngest son said, well, can you give me ideas? And he goes, yeah, I can give you ideas. You're going to want to put some kind of practice in throughout the year, maybe even extending into the summer, that works on the areas your coach said he would like to see you improve. Mm-hmm. You know anybody who could help you do that? And he goes, well, you could, Dad. And he goes, well, I could, but if you've noticed our size ratio, I was a point guard, not a power forward. So there are things I can help you with, or I could be there to help, the balls, get collected. Yeah. But you're going to need somebody, and I don't think he finished that sentence. And there was another guy, his name was Ron, and he was on the city basketball team that I played on. He was one of our power forwards there. He knew the family really well. He just walked down the bleachers and said, hey, Ron, I wondered if you might be able to help me with this. And he and Ron started meeting in the spring, on the weekends, and then through the summer. And when it came to the next year for tryouts, he made the varsity, and he was a starter because of that work that he put in there. And kind of the theme in there was his dad was definitely, I don't want to live through you. Mm-hmm. You need to learn these skills to make these choices, because whether it's basketball or whether it's going to be auto mechanics, you have to figure out how you want to be the best you want to be.
And I'm going to speculate that I think even possibly from a bigger picture perspective, your children might be annoyed with what is ultimately good parenting, but it will lead to an outcome that is better, right? And so it could, like a potential alternative outcome could have been like, the dad saying, "Oh yeah, I'll just clean that all up for you," and the dad goes to the coach, and the kid might be like, yeah. But then down the road, the kid might think, well, my dad didn't give me that opportunity. My dad solved my problems for me, and and that was less good.
Right.
So it's kind of this like,
because you're not gaining those skills: communication, negotiation, self-assertiveness.
I think good parenting annoys children in the moment, and then like leads to good things like longer term. I think a lot of life is that way.
So good parenting brings up a variety of emotions in the child, and an annoyance is going to be one of those.
Yeah.
Because we're not getting what we wanted at that time.
In the moment.
But it's actually a motivating emotion, and so that's one of those pieces. I had a softball pitcher that would come to see me, and she literally went to the highest levels of softball you could possibly do
for her age.
And her parents were very much in the conversations. Hey, look at me! Look what we have. It wasn't like the young man I just described with his dad, because his dad would talk about his son's accomplishments, but it was not made to be about him. It was made, not in a way that drew the dad in. Hey, give me attention. Look at me. Look, I created this creature, and it's their hard work is now looking good for me. Whereas I've seen a lot of parents that they do that. That's that vicarious living, almost like, and I've struggled with those feelings myself when it's like, this almost feels like a second chance at being able to do the sport again. All right, I'll just run out there and play, and they're all 8-year-olds. It doesn't, it's not going to work. And so being able to help your kids where they're at to be able to, have fun. Maybe they play, maybe they don't, maybe they move on to something else. How do you encourage them?
Well, and kind of our headline here over our mini series is Things Dads Do That Push Their Sons Away. So our argument here would be that, like, if you live vicariously through your kid, it's that like doing the thing maybe up front that, I don't know, maybe the kid even appreciates it in the moment, or they think they do, but over the long term, it's not going to be good for the relationship because you're taking over their life if you're living vicariously through them. And that just sounds icky.
That reminds me of like when my brother was playing soccer in high school, and one of the coaches, he had 2 sons. He was in my brother's class, and then he had a younger son by a couple of years. And every time they played a game, there was game tape. And so the very next thing that the older boy especially had to do is watch the game tape with the dad. And it wasn't about encouragement. It was about all the things he couldn't do or didn't do. There was a very big, because the dad saw his oldest son as the talented mini version of himself. And he was a talented soccer player in his own day. He went on through college. I think he was a college coach. So he had his own, achievements that he had done. His younger son had thighs like tree trunks. And when he would come to the field ahead of everybody and warm up, he was kicking the ball he'd go to like a quarter of the way in front of their goal, and he would kick it, and then he would go to half court and he would kick it. He's aiming at the goal. He would then go to 3/4 of the field, which is now on his side, and he would kick it, and he would go to basically in front of the goal, and he would kick it, and he consistently put it in the left upper corner no matter where he was at. And he would go all over the field and do that. He had an amazing accuracy in his kicks, but his dad didn't see that whatsoever.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
So like there was some strange sense of like, he wasn't even seeing the thing in front of him.
Right.
He just decided that this was going to be the kid that he would live through.
His dad was a a forward or a striker. I can't remember the right term, in soccer.
Right, the forward part of the team.
Yep. And his son was a forward part of the team. The younger son was a rover or midfielder.
Yeah.
And
Long
so
baller,
that
yeah.
automatically lost value in Dad's eyes. And it wasn't just Dad that was missing this, because I remember, I'll just call him Billy. I said, Billy, does the coach know you have this ability?
Oh, because he didn't do it when the coach was around.
Well, he was doing it when people were coming, including the coach. Yeah. And he goes, well, I mean, he sees me kick, but I don't think he cares. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What if you just did it in the game? And he goes, what? Well, what if you just
from
did
midfield,
bonk, put it in? And he goes, well, it's not really supposed to be my role.
No, your role's to get points.
But it could be. Well, and there's certain rules that go for some of these different things. And he goes, I don't know. He'll probably just get mad at me. Everybody just always gets mad at me, And I'm like, okay,
always.
All right. I hear you. And he goes, well, we'll see. Well, about halfway through the game, he had the ball there around just past the midfield on his side. And he just took it, spun, turned, set it, and he took that shot. And
from just halfway across
the field with the defender,
Wow. Sure.
And he sent it to the same spot he had been aiming for, and it just sailed over the net.
Oh, he was high.
He was just inches high.
Well, because he had a defender to deal with, probably.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's because now this is a different thing. He hasn't practiced that way. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen a goalie fall over in the box before, but he did. He was like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
He wasn't prepared for a ball to come from that far away.
Right. Well, and the coach stood up and he was like yelling and screaming. And his hands were going,
His hands were going.
And then Billy got the ball again a little later on, and he was a little farther back, and he spun, turned, set it, and he kicked it, and he hit the crossbar.
Oh, so he was lower this
just
time.
in the corner. He just boing off there. Well, then the coach pulled him out and yelled at him, and his hands were going, and he sent him to the end of the bench, and he looked over across the field at me, and he goes,
right, see?
And I'm like, everybody's missing it.
Yeah.
So it was my custom to kind of hang out because I would, get to know people. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I'm going to help coach pick up the cones. And so we're picking up the cones, and he's on one side of the field and I'm on the other, and we meet over here. And I'm like, so Jim, that was interesting out there what Billy did. And he goes, oh, he's such a hard kid to coach. I mean, he just kind of does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And it's just so hard to be able to wrangle him in. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't both balls basically hit the same spot? And he just stopped and he goes, well, yeah, they did. Wasn't he past half field on one of them and farther on the other one? And he goes, oh my gosh, he was.
He wasn't even paying attention.
Isn't that called consistency? He goes, very much consistent. I think you might have a secret weapon here, Jim. He goes, can you take these cones? I got plays to write. And he weaponized that boy's leg, which took him all the way to the second or third round of the playoffs that year. So that's a part of, where we're going is that things that we miss or we get stuck on because Jim had a really, you need to do what I say.
Right.
And I'm saying you're a midfielder or a rover. You don't kick the ball back here because it has to go up here to actually be able to score, and that's just not the way it's done.
But you miss things when you're when you're myopic about this thing you have in your head.
Right. And that's one of the things that we can do as fathers is that if our kid isn't doing it the same way, the way that it should be done. Mm-hmm. I've heard that Arnold Palmer, you will never see him actually go through the swing on the golf course. You'll only see pictures of him finishing because he has the worst golfing form ever known to man. But it worked, and he did very well with that. And that's where some of those pieces can really get in our way.
So ultimately, don't live vicariously through your child.
because it can get you stuck
Yeah.
in a I have this dream.
Yep.
And you're probably missing something.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, definitely make sure to check out our other parts of the series where we're talking about things that dads do that push their sons away. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave us a comment, and we will see you on the next show.